This is really hard, and I didn't know there was this much, but we're gonna get through all of it for you. We'll read it all. These are the accounts of the woman in the situation, Ashley, who, with balls of steel, gave up her name in this case, which is absolutely shocking to me. I brought the court document up just so you could see it yourself. What's up, guys? I just wanted to talk about the P. Diddy case with some new stuff going on. Wanted to put a little disclaimer up front right here. Not for the faint of heart. There's some graphic information in this court document here that we're about to show you. Right, meow. I got my buddy Matt here to join me to help me read through this court document because it's a bit dark. What's going on, Matt?
What's up, dude?
This case involves sexual assault, battery, the R word that I will not use on YouTube, sexual abuse, false imprisonment, and kidnapping. Defendant Diddy's been sued by countless individuals for crimes similar to the ones enumerated in this complaint. We do have a new account here from another victim. So basically what happened here is that Ashley Farham is her name. She openly decided to kind of put her name out there, which is new and ballsy. Says she resides in California. She basically met this guy, Shane, at a bar. Let's go right here. This guy, Shane Pierce, she met at a bar, and apparently she had gotten into some kind of little brawl. Basically what happened is this guy went out on his phone to try to impress her and called P. Diddy. She was not impressed by this, and she said that on the phone. She also told P. Diddy that she thought he had something to do with the Tupac Shakur death. And P. Diddy was not very fond of that comment. It actually says in these court documents here that P. Diddy had replied, "You're going to pay for that." And so here we are several weeks later. The parties involved, Ashley Farham. Oh, you know what? I mispronounced the name. The plaintiff's name is Ashley Parham. I threw an extra H in there. Ashley Parham is an individual who resides in California. Defendant Sean Combs is an individual who resides in California, as we know. Defendant Christina Corham, who will be referred to as Defendant KK, is an individual who, upon information and belief, resides in California. So it sounds like all these people reside in California. Christina is referred to in this whole court document as basically P. Diddy's right hand lady. Have you noticed that there's been several of those, Matt? They've come out and basically called multiple different women P. Diddy's Ghislaine Maxwell.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. Everybody has handlers when you're that high up, right? When you've got so many, quote, businesses going on, and you've got to have people you're managing to like try and get these things done. So it never surprises me that there's always like a handler or a person who goes out and get it. In fact, that seems like to be part of like, you know, trafficking 101 or something.
Yeah, we're gonna move on here. The next, it's just so dark. It's so dark. The next defendant would be Shane, in this case, the guy that she met outside the bar. So they met outside the bar. They went through that whole thing. A couple weeks later, Shane had invited her over to his apartment, and they watched a movie together. He went and grabbed her a glass of water. One point said something about the fact that his door was having issues fully closing. And so here is exactly why he's being denied bail. In this document, it says defendant's fraudulent concealment through active attempts to cover up caused the ongoing trauma plaintiff suffered. So yeah, they're saying he has in the past already tried to cover this thing up. Plaintiff and defendant Shane then began to watch a movie, and defendant Shane offered her a glass of water, which he retrieved and brought back to plaintiff. And that is exactly where we left off in the intro. So approximately 10 minutes after plaintiff and defendant Shane returned from their drive, defendant Diddy entered defendant Shane's residence. So this is where Diddy entered the residence. And this is where things start getting a bit weird, and where if you are not into content, you might want to turn this video off.
Probably should
if you want to, yeah, if you want to know what happened, keep the video on. We're going to take you on a little journey through some messed up stuff, and the price of admission here, if you're a return viewer, is hitting that subscription button and the notification bell. You know how that goes. So defendant Diddy entered the home in a grand, ready-to-party manner. It says his grandiose entrance was so loud that the dogs upstairs started barking. Defendant Diddy did not enter the home through the backyard entrance, but instead through the main entrance. That, along with defendant Diddy, were his bodyguard, defendant Doe 1. So we didn't mention 3 of the other defendants. There are 3 other defendants.
Different does.
Different does not being named at the moment, all apparently residing in California, which, Matt, what does that tell you?
Well, it tells you a number of things. You have either aspiring celebrities or celebrities itself.
Yeah. So it sounds like celebrities are going to get ratted out in these civil suits regardless. A woman who plaintiff later identified as a defendant KK. Another woman, small, skinny build, early 30s with blonde mid-length hair, who plaintiff has still been unable to identify. So maybe not super celebrities, but like you said, want to be.
Yeah, you're hanging out with those people or hanging out with Diddy thinking he's going to advance your career.
Yeah, it seems like that's what a lot of these people were, that were just people trying to advance their career and being taken advantage of. And I saw so much of that in the music industry, working in it. I am very, very much inclined to believe that that's true. You know, and bear with us here. We actually had a couple audio issues in our last P. Diddy video. It was a browser issue, it turns out, so we're trying all new kinds of browsers. Yeah, I've used more browsers this week than Nintendo's filed lawsuits. So the plaintiff believes defendant Shane invited her over to set her up to be assaulted by defendant Diddy because of the statement she made about defendant Diddy a month prior. He didn't like the Tupac statement and he went after her. I think that's pretty clear.
Yeah.
Defendant Diddy then began advancing towards where plaintiff was sitting on defendant Shane's bed with a knife and held it to the right side of plaintiff's face and threatened to give her Glasgow smile.
Oh my God.
Oh. In retaliation for her previous statements on the video call. I believe P. Diddy killed both Tupac and Biggie Smalls.
Probably had something to do with Biggie, too.
Defendant KK then made a threat to plaintiff, this is P. Diddy's right-hand woman, that they could ship her off anywhere in the world and that she would never see her family or anyone she knew ever again. And remember that I am reading the court document directly. This is straight from the court document. Defendant Shane then partially undressed plaintiff, then defendant Diddy removed the remainder of plaintiff's clothing, removing the knife from her face, then retrieved a bottle of liquid from a large fanny pack.
This dude carries the oil? That's weird.
Yeah, it was reported that he literally just carries this substance and the drugs around with him in a fanny pack at his parties, like everywhere. Like, dude,
somebody
and
needs
even
to
in
go
public.
Back. Somebody now needs to go back and look through pictures and see if
Find
I can
fanny packs.
Find Diddy and fanny packs. Hashtag Fanny Diddy.
Now, a little disclaimer, this is where it starts to get kind of dark. These are the accounts of the woman in the situation, Ashley, who, with balls of steel, gave up her name in this case, which is absolutely shocking to me. I brought the court document up just so you could see it yourself.
All right, let me take over here, Darren, because I know this is definitely hard to read through. So defendant Diddy then squirted a bottle of liquid on the plaintiff, which placed her in a fear that she was being squirted with a chemical substance like acid. The plaintiff then soon realized the substance was oil/a lubricant, and plaintiff was squirted with this oil substance over the entirety of her naked body. Continues on by saying defendant KK itself made a threat to plaintiff that they could ship her off anywhere in the world and that she would never see her family or anyone she ever knew again. Defendant Shane then partially undressed the plaintiff, and then defendant Diddy removed the remainder of plaintiff's clothes, removing the knife from her face, and then retrieved a bottle of liquid from a large fanny pack. This is where it gets kind of hard, so I apologize, but defendant KK was then told by defendant Diddy to insert what looked like a syringe from sterile packaging into plaintiff's vagina. KK did as told, and then defendant Diddy, she was, I guess, told couldn't use an IUD because it had prematurely been released from its packaging. Diddy was upset by this, took the syringe from defendant KK and tried inserting it into the plaintiff's vagina instead. KK and Diddy began to argue as defendant KK continued to advise defendant Diddy that since the IUD had been prematurely released from its packaging, it was no way that they could insert it into plaintiff's vagina effectively. And so after some time, defendant Diddy heeded the advice of defendant KK and removed the syringe from the plaintiff's vagina and handed it to defendant KK. So this next part is disgusting and it's probably going to trigger you as well. So please be advised. Defendant KK and Jane Doe then exited Shane's residence, leaving plaintiff alone with defendants Diddy, Shane, and Doe's 1 and 2. Defendant Diddy then picked up a television remote that was near the plaintiff and violently inserted it into plaintiff's vagina. He violently R-worded her, the television remote, and told the plaintiff that her life was in his hands and that if he wanted to he could take her and she would never be seen again.
So to summarize what's happened so far, P. Diddy basically just busted in there with his right-hand woman, KK.
His crew.
Yeah, his crew. He had a bodyguard waiting outside and a driver waiting outside. He inserted some kind of... He squirted her with a bottle of lube. And then
She had on him.
Yeah, which he just had on him in a fanny pack. He inserted some sort of syringe into her vagina with some sort of device. Anyways, what that led up, they got frustrated. There was a struggle. They proceeded to put a remote in her vagina, a whole TV remote.
I'm gathering from the document there when they're saying they're trying to put an IUD in her. That was so that way he could have sex with her and not potentially get her pregnant.
Yeah.
Because that's what I think an IUD is, right?
Yeah.
Is like it prevents the woman from getting pregnant. So like there were plans for him to sexually abuse her in front of all those people. That's like, wow, that's horrible.
Plaintiff began hysterically crying from the threats by defendant Diddy, along with the pain of being violently R-worded that it's going to keep showing up by defendant Diddy with the television remote, as well as lingering pain from the ordeal with the IUD that we just mentioned, syringe insertion. Defendant Diddy then instructed defendant Shane to turn plaintiff onto her stomach, seemingly tired of hearing the plaintiff's blood-curdling cries. Defendant Shane then grabbed plaintiff by her abdomen and hips and turned plaintiff on her stomach. Defendant Diddy then instructed defendant Shane to put a pillow over her head because he didn't want to see her face or hear her cries, and instructed defendant Shane to anally R-word plaintiff. Defendant Shane did as he was told by defendant Diddy and began to anally R-word plaintiff. Defendant Diddy then violently R-word plaintiff anally after defendant Shane. So they just went back and forth, is what this is horrifying. Like, this man and everyone involved should be behind bars for the entirety of their lives without questions asked. I mean, everyone involved, the driver, all 5, 7, whatever people it was, which they are. I skipped past that part in this court document, but it does say they're going after everyone. That's why everyone's listed as a defendant, because everyone is going to have to defend themselves in court. Everyone involved. Everyone that let it happen, the whole crew that showed up. How did he get multiple people to be in on this? Like, how do you convince multiple people to do something like this?
I don't know. It's very odd. I guess you go through a systematic vetting system where you find people who are okay with this, other people, like-minded people, because that's the only rational conclusion I can come to, is that all these people were just like him, right? And like they always say the best will find each other. Well, the worst will find each other as well. So like that would be my only logic on it. Otherwise, you're just like, yeah, why would you condone this, dude? Like, why are you participating in this? It doesn't make any sense.
Defendant Doe 2 then joined defendants Diddy and Shane, taking turns anally R-wording plaintiff. It just over and over.
Over and over.
This is really hard, and I didn't know there was this much, but we're gonna get through all of it for you. We'll read it all.
Yeah, immediately after defendant Doe 2 R-worded plaintiff, he exited defendant Shane's residence, and then defendant Diddy then instructed defendant Doe to also R-word the plaintiff. So instead of immediately doing so, the plaintiff, defendant Doe, doused plaintiff with more oil lubricant and then jumped on top of plaintiff's naked and oiled body, treating it like a slip and slide and knocking the wind out of plaintiff due to enormous size. Holy crap, I didn't read that part. I didn't know that. That's horrible. What?
I read ahead a little bit while you were doing your last, and like almost started getting tears in my eyes for the stuff that's like coming up, including that, starting with this.
Oh my God. Defendant Doe then caught himself from sliding over plaintiff's oiled body and off the bed. He then began R-wording the plaintiff's vaginally. So he ended up doing it. While defendant Doe was R-wording plaintiff, defendant Diddy sat in the chair near the bed and began masturbating while reporting plaintiff's R-word by defendant. Another party's phone fell on the bed near the plaintiff, and the plaintiff then attempted to grab the phone, but it slipped out of her hands and onto the floor due to the oil lubricant that had been doused all over by defendants Diddy and Doe 1. Defendant Diddy began laughing at the plaintiff's attempt to grab the phone. Throughout this violent gangbang style R-word, defendant Diddy made constant belittling remarks to plaintiff that included he owned her now. Plaintiff's body was becoming more and more limp over the course of the violent abuse until eventually
go.
she had no control over her body, nor could she move her body. When defendant Doe was finished being abused, plaintiff defendant KK entered the room to examine the condition of plaintiff, who was barely able to move or control her bodily functions. Oh my gosh. And then defendant KK examined plaintiff to see if she needed assistance and was about to give plaintiff an IV fluid. Plaintiff cannot be certain if she did or if she did not receive such intravenous intervention. Defendant KK then opened a different bag, different than the one Diddy, and removed the oil from where plaintiff observed several medicine bottles, IV fluid bags, and other identical powder-like drugs. Defendant KK then removed a pill from one of the medicine bottles and gave it to defendant Diddy. Defendant Diddy then inserted the pill into plaintiff's mouth and down her throat to where plaintiff had no choice but to ingest the unknown pill. And then defendant Diddy, Shane, KK, and Doe exited the residence to the backyard where they smoked marijuana and cigarettes. And finally, plaintiff remained in an almost lifeless state in defendant Shane's bedroom until she finally regained her bodily functions. Oh my gosh, dude, that is just horrible. The plaintiff then began looking for her clothes and her purse that contained her car keys and cell phone, but could not discover them in the room or anywhere in the apartment. Plaintiff was only able to find a t-shirt on the floor, which she put on to cover her naked body. Plaintiff also observed a black condom wrapper on the floor of the bedroom, which she assumed was used by one of the defendants, most likely defendant Diddy, during the abuse. R-word. Plaintiff then grabbed a knife from the kitchen and headed to the backyard where the defendants were smoking, as this was the only way to exit the premises onto the street.
It gets really convoluted here, and it's basically about how she tries to escape. I looked at it. So here's what happened is that she tried to kind of escape and leave with a knife while they were smoking outside. Well, they didn't like that. P. Diddy called his mom, FaceTimed his mom, and his mom yelled at plaintiff Ashley and said, "Don't hurt my son," like as in to not get him in trouble, to tell her not to rat him out. And I'm gonna read this line. All right, so here's a really important part of this article, and I think we absolutely have to talk about these words. They don't come out of absolutely nowhere. Let's take a look at this line. Defendant Diddy then made further threats that he had gotten off from bigger crimes than this and referred to Tupac again, further antagonizing the plaintiff. I'm sorry, is that not
Culpability or something?
Is that not almost an admittance? Is he just trying to scare her, or why would you say that? Let me repeat that one more time. Defendant Diddy then made further threats that he had gotten off from bigger crimes than this and referred to Tupac, further antagonizing the plaintiff. Let that sink in.
That's crazy, dude.
He did his little whole song and dance after this, exactly how he tries to get all these people how he coerces these people to not rat on him. That's going to be the same song and dance over and over and over again. We're going to keep hearing that same story about them coercing people, which is exactly why he keeps getting denied bail. Matt, would you let this guy out of jail?
Hell no. I mean, this guy's a predator, and not just a single one-off. Like, this guy's a serial predator, and there's multiple counts. There's you sent me something over that said that the FBI is still going to go after a lot of these John Doe and Jane Does, even though they paid off their civil litigation, right? To put the footage and stuff. So now the FBI is getting involved anyway. So once it comes to the federal level, you can't pay them off.
I'll bleep that out. There was a struggle with a knife. There was a struggle with pew pew. Apparently she knocked Diddy over and he went running away up the hill because she tried to chase him down and everything. Once plaintiff made it onto the street, she began yelling loudly for someone to call the police. Thank goodness she got away with her life, at least with her life, barely with her life. That's hardly a life after experiencing something like that.
Oh, I mean,
it's hardly a life.
How do you sleep at night without having nightmares, and how do you go out after that and not be afraid that you're going to be picked up because they were easily able to do all that to you and they're getting away with it, and you have no evidence. It's you versus 8 people. But now that all this information is coming out, it's wait a minute, we actually have other people saying this So now my account will be taken with more credibility.
Diddy sped off in an SUV. She eventually went to the police, and the police, let me just quote this straight from the court document. The sheriff told plaintiff and the neighbor that they had received several noise complaints prior to the neighbor's call and instructed plaintiff to find a way to get home. The sheriff did not offer to take plaintiff home, nor did he call for emergency services, including an ambulance, nor any offer to take plaintiff to the hospital, nor any offer to help plaintiff recover her clothes or effects from the defendant Shane's residence.
When you're in New York, Puff Daddy can get away with it anyway. There's nothing they will say.
That's the new update that we got on P. Diddy. I'm sorry if that made your stomach curl a little bit. It definitely made mine. With the whole media world is going bananas. The only good thing that's going to come out of this is a music renaissance and a bunch of new artists, but it's terrible that this happened to anybody. Anyways,